savage, merciless, watching. She couldn't even stand anymore. She had run until her legs simply stopped answering her, not because she was weak, because something behind her was worse than dying out here. Hannah Cole was on her hands in the cold water, fingers trembling, breath breaking in her throat like something already half gone. Her dress soaked and clinging to her skin as if the river itself didn't want to let her go. Behind her, a man gripped her waist, hard, too hard for comfort. Jed Mercer's hands were rough, calloused, and unyielding as he pulled her upright just enough to keep her from collapsing face first into the shallow water again. From a distance, it didn't look like help. It looked wrong. It looked like the kind of thing men whispered about when they thought no one decent was listening. The kind of sight that could get a man judged before he ever spoke a word. The kind of moment that could follow him longer than any. Hannah gasped, trying to push herself forward, but her legs betrayed her. They buckled. Her whole body shook from the cold, from exhaustion, from something deeper than either. Jed didn't let go. He couldn't. If he did, she would drop right back into that freezing water and maybe not come back up this time. Her body wasn't just cold. Mountain water could do that, even under a bright sky. It was shutting down. Another minute, and she might not wake up again. "Stay with me," he muttered, low and steady, like a man talking to a wounded animal. But then he stopped, completely. His grip tightened. Not in anger, in awareness. His head tilted slightly, eyes narrowing toward the far edge of the open field beyond the water line. He had heard something, a shift, leather, metal. Horse tack brushing against itself, just enough to betray movement. Jed Mercer froze, and in that one still second, everything changed. From where they stood, half in the water and half on the grass, there was nowhere to hide. No trees close enough, no rocks big enough, just open land stretching out under a hard sky that showed everything to anyone who cared to look. And what they would see, what they would think they saw, that would be enough to ruin both of them. Hannah tried to speak, but her teeth chattered too hard. I can't feel my legs," she whispered. Jed looked down at her and then back out across the field. He didn't have time, not for careful choices, not for explanations. If those riders came closer, they wouldn't ask questions. They would decide, and men like that always decided in their own favor. Jed exhaled once, slow, then he did it. Right there. Out in the open, he pulled her fully upright, bracing her against him, one arm locked firm around her waist as he forced her weight onto her feet. She cried out, a sharp, broken sound as her body resisted the movement. "Easy," he said, but his voice had steel in it now. No hesitation, no apology. He reached down and caught the loose saddle strap she'd dragged from the bank, then cinched it around her waist, just enough to keep her from folding the moment he let go. From a distance, it looked even worse now. Closer, tighter, like something no decent man should be doing to a woman alone in a place like this. Jed knew exactly how it looked. He did it anyway, because if he didn't, she wasn't making it out of that water alive, and if those men reached them first, she wasn't making it out at all. The wind moved through the grass, somewhere far off. A horse shifted its weight. Jed didn't look back again. He focused on the only thing that mattered. Keeping her upright, keeping her breathing, keeping her here. Because whatever had chased her this far, whatever had driven her into cold water with no strength left to fight it, was still out there, watching, waiting, and getting close. The story you're about to hear has been collected and rewritten, with a few added details to bring deeper meaning, valuable lessons, and a more emotional experience. The visuals in this video are recreated using AI to help you better feel each moment. If this story isn't right for you, it might be a good time to take a break and take care of yourself. But if you choose to stay, leave a small comment to let me know, and I'll keep bringing you more stories worth listening to. Jed shifted his stance, adjusting to her weight as she leaned heavily against him, her head dipping forward, breath shallow and uneven. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "You fall again. You don't get back up. You hear me?" She gave the smallest nod, barely there, but enough to keep him going. Out beyond the waterline, something moved again. A shape, then another, too far to see clearly, but not far enough to be ignored. Jed's jaw tightened. He had lived alone long enough to know the difference between coincidence and trouble. And that was trouble. Hannah followed his gaze, her eyes struggling to focus through exhaustion. Are they? She started, then stopped. She didn't need to finish. He answered anyway. Yeah, he said. Someone's coming. Her breath hitched. Not from the cold this time. From recognition. From fear that ran deeper than anything the river could give her. Jed felt it. The way her body tensed. The way she tried and failed to pull herself straighter. Whatever was coming, she knew it. And she was more afraid of them than she was of dying out here. That told him everything he needed to know. He tightened his grip once more. Steady and unyielding. Then we don't wait, he said. And for the first time since he'd found her, Jed Mercer stopped being a man who avoided trouble and became a man who chose it. On purpose. Out in the open. So here's the question. If the whole world was about to see something the wrong way, would you still do the right thing, or would you step back and let her fall? Jed didn't move right away, not because he was unsure, because he was measuring distance, time, and how much strength the girl had left in her legs. Not much. He could feel it in the way her weight pressed into him. Hannah wasn't just tired. She was close to shutting down. Can you walk? He asked, low and direct. She tried to answer. Nothing came out. Just a weak breath. Jed gave a small nod to himself. That was answer enough for him. He shifted his grip, steadying her better, then guided her one step forward. Her foot dragged. Didn't lift clean. That wasn't good. Behind them, the water rippled where she had fallen. Cold enough to kill a person slow, or fast if they stayed too long. Jed had seen both. Stay with me, he said again. Not louder, just firmer. He took another step. His boots pressed into the wet ground, leather creaking, the weight of his revolver steady against his hip like a reminder of how things usually ended out here. Then another. Hannah leaned harder into him. If he let her go, even for a second, she would drop. And he knew it. Out in the field, those shapes moved again, closer now. Still quiet, still watching, not rushing. That told him something. Men who rushed were scared. Men who took their time were sure. A man who takes his time usually thinks he already owns the ending. That's the kind you don't turn your back on. Jed didn't like that. Not one bit. He angled them away from the water, toward slightly higher ground where the grass was thicker, better footing, less chance she'd slip again. His horse stood tied a short distance away, ears flicking, sensing tension before any man spoke it. Good animal. Smart enough to stay quiet. Hannah tried to lift her head. Don't let them, she whispered. Her voice cracked. Jed glanced down at her. You know them, he asked. A pause, then the smallest nod. That was enough. He didn't ask more. Didn't need to. He had lived long enough to recognize fear when it came with a name, and whatever name was in her head right now, it wasn't a good one. They took 5 more slow steps, each one harder than the last. Her boots scraped the ground. Her breathing came shallow. Too shallow. Jed stopped again, not because he wanted to, because he had to. If she kept going like this, she'd pass out before they reached the horse, and then it would all get worse. He turned slightly, positioning her so she leaned against his chest instead of pulling away from it. Hey, he said, a little sharper now. Look at me. She didn't, so he waited. 1 second, 2, then her eyes lifted, barely. But they found his. Good. Stay here, he said. Don't drift. She blinked slow. Trying. That was all he needed. He tightened his hold. Stronger this time, then moved. Faster now. Not running, but not wasting steps. Behind them, a sound finally broke clear across the distance. A horse snorted, then the faint creak of leather. Closer. Jed didn't look back. Looking back wouldn't help. It never did. He focused on the horse ahead. 10 steps, maybe 12. Felt longer. Hannah stumbled again, harder this time. Her knees buckled. Jed caught her before she hit the ground, but it cost him time and breath. "Come on," he muttered, more to himself than to her. He shifted, then in one smooth motion, pulled her up higher against him, taking more of her weight. She gasped. Pain, cold, fear. All mixed into one sound. "Sorry," he said. Though it didn't slow him down, the horse lifted its head as they got close. Stepped once, then stilled. Jed reached the reins with one hand, never letting go of her with the other. Good. Still there. Still breathing. He turned her slightly, guiding her toward the saddle. "This part ain't gonna feel good," he said. No sugar. No lies. She gave a weak breath that might have been a laugh, or maybe just air leaving her body. Hard to tell. Jed took that as permission. He lifted, careful but fast, set her across the saddle, not perfect, but enough. She slumped forward, barely holding on. Jed tightened the strap under the saddle and then pulled the edge of her coat around her as best he could, keep what heat she had. Even a little mattered. Then, only then, he turned his head, just a little, out across the field. 2 riders now. Clear enough to see. Coming down the slope, not rushing, but not stopping either. Watching, exactly like he thought. Jed held their gaze for a second. Long enough to make one thing clear. He had seen them. And he wasn't stepping aside. He looked away first. Not in fear, indecision. He grabbed the reins, then moved to the side of the horse. "Hold on," he said. Didn't matter if she could. He said it anyway. He put his foot in the stirrup and pulled himself up behind her in one clean motion. The horse shifted under the weight. Steady. Ready. Jed took one last breath, then clicked his tongue softly. The horse moved. Not fast. Just enough to start. Behind them. The riders changed pace. That small shift. That was all it took. Now it was real. Now it wasn't just watching anymore. Now it was coming. Jed leaned forward slightly, one arm keeping Hannah from sliding off and the other guiding the reins. His voice stayed calm, almost too calm. "We're not going back," he said. No hesitation, no doubt. Ahead of them. The land opened into low grass and scattered rock. A hunter's path, not a road. Not something most men would choose, Baudsel. But Jed wasn't most men. Behind them, the distance closed. Slow. Steady. Certain. And Hannah. They won't stop. Jed's eyes narrowed just a fraction. "Yeah," he said. "I figured that. So here's the thing. If a man knows trouble is coming, knows he can still turn away, still walk back to a quiet life, why does he choose not to? Why does he ride straight into it instead?" So that's how it was going to be. He leaned forward just a little, speaking low near Hannah's ear. "Liz, listen," he said. "If you pass out, I'm tying you to this saddle. You hear me?" A pause. Then faint. "Don't let them take it." Whatever it was, she'd hidden it deep. Deep enough that those men were still chasing her for it. Her voice barely made it out. But that word, that stuck. Jed frowned slightly. "What's it?" he asked. No answer this time. Her head dipped forward again. "Too far." He tightened his arm around her, pulling her back upright. "Hey," he said. "Sharper now. Stay with me." Her breathing hitched, so a weak inhale, then another. Barely enough. Jed didn't need to. Whatever she was carrying, whatever she didn't want them to take, that was the reason those men were behind them right now. And men didn't ride that hard over nothing. He had seen enough years to know that. They crested the small rise. On the other side, the ground broke into uneven patches of dirt and stone. Better. Harder to track. Harder to ride fast. Jed slowed just a fraction, letting the horse pick its way through without stumbling. No point breaking a leg now. That would end everything. behind them. One of the riders shouted something, too far to make out the words, but the tone, that carried just fine, confident, like a man who thought he already owned the ending. Jed's jaw tightened. He'd heard that tone before. Didn't like it then. Didn't like it now. Hannah stirred again, this time a little stronger. "They work for him," she whispered. Jed kept his eyes ahead. A pause. "Boone, that was all. Just a name, but it landed." Jed didn't react right away. Didn't need to. He knew that name. Most folks within 100 miles did. Boone Keller. Big land, big money, bigger temper. The kind of man who didn't ask twice, the kind of man people stepped around instead of standing up to. Jed hadn't stepped around anyone in a long time, mostly because he stayed far enough away not to have to. But now Boone's men were behind him, closing in, and that changed things. Jed adjusted his grip on the reins. Slight shift, nothing dramatic, but inside, something had already made up its mind. "All right," he said under his breath, more to himself than to her. The path narrowed between two low rock ridges, just enough space for one horse at a time. Jed guided them through without slowing too much. Once inside, the sound of hooves behind them echoed differently. Closer, louder, too close. He glanced back this time. Quick, just one look. 2 riders for sure, maybe a third further back, armed. Of course they were. Men like Boone didn't send unarmed riders after something they wanted back. Jed looked forward again. The ridge opened up into a wider stretch of dry ground, and beyond that, a split. Left led toward open land, faster, cleaner, and easier to follow. Right cut down toward lower ground, brush and uneven creek beds. Slower, harder, messier. Jed didn't hesitate. He pulled the reins right. The horse responded instantly, good animal. Behind him, one of the riders shouted again, this time sharper. They saw it. They knew what he was doing, and they didn't like it. Good. Jed leaned forward slightly, voice low again. "Hang on," he said. Even if she couldn't, he said it anyway. Hannah's head rested against his arm now, her weight heavier. Too heavy. Time was running thin. Real thin. He could feel it. That line between staying awake and slipping under. She was right on it. And if she went over, everything got harder. Everything got slower. Everything got worse. The ground dipped again, this time toward a narrow stretch of dry creek bed. Rocks, loose dirt, bad footing for speed, perfect for losing someone. If you knew how to use it. Jed did. He guided the horse down carefully, letting it pick its steps, then pushed forward once they hit the bottom. Behind them, the riders slowed, just a little. They had to. No choice. That bought him seconds, maybe a minute. Not much, but enough to matter. Jed's mind worked through it quick. Distance, light. How long before dark? How far to the nearest place with people, with witnesses? Because out here, just land and sky. A man could disappear. A woman could vanish, and no one would ask too many questions. He wasn't letting that happen. Not this time. Not again. Hannah shifted one more time, barely there. "They'll say," she whispered. Her voice faded. Jed leaned closer. "Say what?" A long pause. Then, "That you took me." Jed's eyes hardened just a little. Yeah. He had already figured that part. He looked ahead, then back, just once more. The riders were still there. Still sure. Jed exhaled slow. "Let 'em say it," he muttered, then added, quieter. "We'll give 'em something better to choke on." Ahead, beyond the creek bed, something came into view, far off, small, but real. A structure. Wood, low roof, smoke. Jed's eyes locked onto it. That wasn't just any building. That was a stop. A place people passed through. A place where stories didn't stay buried. And if he could get her there, everything might change, just a little. But sometimes, a little was all a man needed. So here's the thing. If the truth is still out there, and the people chasing you already have their story ready, do you run faster? Or do you ride straight toward the only place that can prove them wrong? If you're still here, you're already part of this ride. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this, and while you're listening, pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea. Tell me what time it is where you are and where you're hearing this from, because the next place Jed is heading, that's where this whole thing either gets cleared or buried for good. Jed didn't slow down, not when he saw the building, not when he heard the riders behind them shifting again, adjusting, closing. He just leaned forward slightly and kept the horse moving steady, fast enough to gain ground, slow enough not to lose it all on one bad step. The structure ahead grew clearer. A low wooden stop, weathered boards, a hitching rail out front, and smoke drifting thin from a short chimney. Dry crossing. Jed hadn't been there in months, maybe longer. Didn't matter. Places like that didn't change much. A couple of men, maybe a woman running the stove, someone passing through, someone always watching. And right now, that was exactly what he needed. Witnesses, not for himself, for her. Because out here, a man's word didn't weigh much unless someone else was there to hear it. Hannah shifted again in front of him. Weaker now, her head leaned heavy against his arm, breathing shallow. Too shallow. Jed frowned. Time was almost gone. No answer. He tightened his hold, keeping her from slipping. Behind him, the riders pushed harder. He could hear it clear now. No more distance hiding it. They knew where he was heading. They didn't want him getting there first. Of course they didn't. Because once other eyes got involved, their story got harder to sell. Jed glanced ahead again. The distance wasn't far, but it wasn't close either. And with Hannah fading like this, every second stretched longer than it should. He made a quick choice. Shifted the reins. The animal responded. Picking up pace despite the uneven ground. Good. Still strong. They crested one last rise, and now the building sat right there in front of them. Clear. Real. 2 horses tied out front. That meant people inside. Good. Real good. Jed didn't slow. Behind him, a voice finally carried clear. Stop right there, sharp. Commanding. Like it had authority behind it. Jed didn't turn, didn't answer, didn't even blink. He kept riding, because men like that didn't want a conversation. They wanted control. And he wasn't giving them that. Hannah stirred again. Barely. They'll twist it, she whispered. Jed leaned closer. Let him try, he said. But inside, he knew she was right. Men like Boone Keller didn't just chase, they shaped stories. They bent truth until it looked like whatever they needed it to be. And right now, from a distance, this whole thing looked bad. A lone man, a weak woman, no witnesses. No. Jed's jaw tightened. That part hit something old, something buried, because he had seen that kind of story before. Years back. Different place, same kind of silence, a woman no one spoke up for, and a man who walked away because it was easier. He hadn't liked the man he was back then. His grip on the reins tightened just a little, not from fear, from memory. He didn't like where that memory went. Didn't like what it reminded him of. And he sure as hell wasn't letting it repeat, not while he was still breathing. They reached the edge of the yard. Dust kicked up under the horse's hooves. One of the tied horses lifted its head, restless. Jed slowed now, not much, just enough to not come crashing in like a runaway fool. The door to the building creaked open. A man stepped out, older, gray beard, slow eyes, the kind that noticed more than they let on. Good. Jed rode straight up, didn't stop short, didn't hesitate. He wanted this scene clear. Right in the open. He pulled the horse to a stop just a few steps from the porch. Need help, he said. Simple. Direct. No story yet. No explanation. Just truth. The old man looked at Hannah. Really looked. Took in the way she leaned, the way she barely held on, the way Jed kept her from falling. Then his eyes shifted past them, out toward the rise behind, where the riders were coming into view. That was when things changed. You could see it. That moment a man decides what side he's on. The old man didn't say anything, but he stepped forward. Just one step. Closer. That was enough. Behind them. The riders came in fast now. No more hiding it. No more pretending. They pulled up hard, dust kicking around them. 2 men, just like Jed thought. Both armed, both looking like they already owned the ground they were standing on. One of them spoke first. "That girl's ours," he said. Calm. Too calm. Jed didn't. He just sat there, one arm steady around Hannah, the other resting near the reins. "No," he said. That was it. No long speech, no argument, just one word, and it hung there, heavy. The second rider shifted in his saddle, eyes narrowing. "You don't understand," he said. She was taken. "We're bringing her back." Jed let out a slow breath, still didn't turn, still didn't give them more than they deserved. "Looks to me," he said, like she was running. Can't, just for a second. But it mattered, because now it wasn't just their word. Now someone else had heard it, seen it. The old man on the porch didn't speak, but he didn't step back either, and that made things different. Hannah stirred one last time, just enough to whisper, "Don't let them." Then she went still, not gone, but close, real close. Jed felt it, and something in him locked in place. No more waiting, just enough to make one thing clear. He wasn't handing her over. Not here, not now, not ever. The wind moved through the yard, dry, quiet, heavy with something about to break. And both sides knew it. So here's the question. When 2 stories stand in the same place, and only one of them is true, who decides which one survives? The air didn't move. Not a sound, not a bird, not even the wind. Just 4 men, one half-conscious woman, and truth sitting somewhere between them like a loaded gun no one wanted to touch first. Jed didn't look at the riders. He looked at the old man on the porch, because that was the man who mattered now. Witness or silence. That was the choice. The old man shifted his weight slightly, eyes moving from Hannah to Jed, then out to the 2 riders. Slow, careful, like a man who had lived long enough to know when trouble wasn't leaving on its own. One of the riders cleared his throat. "You don't want to get mixed up in this," he said, looking straight at the old man now. "Girl's property of Mr. Keller. Ran off this morning. Property." That word landed heavy. Jed's jaw tightened. But he still didn't speak. Let them talk. Let them build their story. Because men like that always said too much when they thought they already had control. The old man didn't answer, just kept looking. The rider went on. "We're just taking her back where she belongs. Simple. Clean. Easy to believe. If you didn't look too close." Jed finally turned his head a little. "Just enough. Funny thing," he said. "People don't usually run like that toward a river unless they're scared of something worse behind them." The second rider shifted in his saddle. "Didn't like that. Not one bit." "You saying we scared her?" he asked. Jed shrugged slightly. "I'm saying she didn't look like she was headed home." Silence again, but this time it had weight. Because now there were 2 sides, and the old man had heard both. Hannah moved. Barely. Her hand slid weakly against the front of the saddle. Jed felt it, looked down. Her fingers were fumbling at something near the edge of the saddle blanket. Slow, clumsy, but deliberate. He didn't stop her. Didn't ask. Just watched. The riders noticed too. And of course they did. And that was when their tone changed. Subtle, but sharp. "Hand her down." The first one said, "Not asking any more." Telling. Jed didn't move, didn't even blink. "No," again. Just one word. The second rider exhaled, annoyed now. "You really want to do this out here," he said. Jed gave the smallest nod. "Seems we already are." That stung. You could see it, because now it wasn't just about the girl. It was about control slipping, and men like that hated that more than anything. Hannah's hand finally found what it was reaching for, a small tear along the underside of the saddle lining, hidden. Easy to miss, unless you knew where to look. Jed saw it. The riders saw it. Too late. Her fingers pulled something free. Small bundle, wrapped tight. Oiled cloth. Even from where he sat, Jed could tell. That wasn't nothing. That was the reason. The whole reason. The first rider's face changed, just a flicker, but enough. There it is, he muttered. Now it was out. No more pretending, no more soft words. Give that here, he snapped. Jed moved faster than they expected. Not dramatic, not flashy, just one clean motion. He reached forward, took the bundle from Hannah's weak grip, and tucked it inside his coat. Gone, just like that. Now it was his. Now the line was drawn. Clear, sharp. No going back. The riders saw it, and whatever patience they had left. That was it. Gone. You just made this a whole lot worse for yourself, the first one said. Jed let out a quiet breath. Seems like it was already headed that way. The old man on the porch stepped down one more step. Still not speaking, but closer now. Watching. Really watching. Because now the truth had weight. Now there was something real in the middle of all this. Not just words, not just claims. Something that made two armed men ride hard across open land. Something worth lying for. Something worth killing for. Hannah sagged forward again. Completely this time, her strength finally gone. Jed caught her before she slipped, adjusted her just enough to keep her steady, still breathing, barely. He didn't look down long. Didn't have time, because the world around him had shifted, quiet, tight, like a storm right before it breaks. The second rider moved his hand, slow, toward his side, not fast, didn't need to be. The message was clear. This wasn't about talking anymore. Jed saw it. Of course he did. He had seen that exact movement more times than he cared to remember. He shifted slightly, just enough, weight balanced, ready. Not looking for a fight, but not stepping away from one either. The old man's voice finally came, rough, calm. That girl don't look like she belongs to anyone, he said. Simple, plain. But it hit, because now someone else had said it out loud. The riders didn't like that. Not at all. You stay out of this, the first one snapped. The old man didn't move, didn't step back, didn't raise his voice. He just stood there. And that changed everything. Because now it wasn't just one man against two. Now it was something else. Something harder to push aside. Jed felt it. That shift. Small. But real. He adjusted his grip once more. One arm steady around Hannah. The other close. Ready. And for the first time since this started, he spoke with something a little heavier behind it. She stays, he said. No anger. No shouting. Just truth. And that kind of truth. And that was the kind men either bled over. The wind picked up just a little. Dust moved across the ground. The riders looked at each other. Just a glance, but it said enough. They were deciding. Right now. How far they were willing to take this. And Jed already knew the answer. So here's the thing. When a lie starts falling apart in front of witnesses, do the men behind it walk away? Or do they make sure no one is left alive to remember what really happened? The second rider's hand didn't stop. It kept moving, slow, deliberate, like a man who had done this before and never had to rush it. Jed saw it clear, felt it even before it happened. That shift in the air, that moment when talk runs out and something else takes over. He didn't reach for anything. Not yet. He just watched. Because sometimes the first man to move was the first man to fall. The old man on the porch didn't step back. Didn't speak again. But his eyes stayed locked on the more than most folks would think. Because once someone sees something, really sees it, it gets harder to pretend later. The first rider exhaled through his nose, annoyed now. tired of the back and forth. Last chance, he said. Hand over the girl. Hand over what she's got. We ride off and forget this ever happened. Jed almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was familiar. That kind of offer always came right before things turned bad. He shifted slightly in the saddle. Still steady. Still calm. No, he said, same as before, same tone, nothing extra. That was the moment it broke. The second rider's hand dropped fast to his side. Too fast now. No more pretending. Jed moved at the same time, not reaching for a weapon, not drawing, just turning the horse hard, using the animal itself as cover. The rider's hand came up with steel, but the angle was wrong now, blocked. Jed leaned low over Hannah, pulling her down with him, keeping her shielded as the horse shifted sideways. A shot cracked. Jed didn't rush. He turned just enough. One shot. Low. The lead rider's horse stumbled hard, throwing off its stride, loud, sharp. Too close. The old man flinched but didn't move. Dust kicked up near the horse's front legs. Missed. Barely. The horse reared slightly, startled, but Jed kept control. Firm hands, steady pressure. No panic. He had ridden worse. He had seen worse. Behind him, the first rider cursed. Idiot, he snapped, but it was too late. Once a shot was fired, everything changed. No more talk, no more clean ending. Now it was messy. Now it was real. Jed didn't waste another shot. He kicked the horse forward instead, hard. Not away. Not out into open land. Forward. Straight past the porch, straight toward the side of the building. Close. Too close for a clean shot. The riders hesitated. Just didn't want to hit the building. Didn't want witnesses catching more than they already had. That was the opening. Jed used it. He pulled the horse around the side, cutting tight along the wall, using wood and shadow for cover. Another shot rang out. This one wider. Rushed. Missed again. Good. Jed didn't slow. Didn't look back. He leaned low, keeping Hannah tight against him, guiding the horse toward the narrow space behind the building. Not a full escape, but enough to break line of sight. Enough to make the riders reposition, and that bought seconds. Maybe more. Behind the building, the ground dipped slightly, packed dirt and scattered crates. Jed pulled the horse to a stop just long enough to think. Quick! Clear! The old man had seen. That mattered. The riders had fired first. That mattered more. Now this wasn't a question of stories. Now it was proof. But proof didn't mean much if you didn't live long enough to use it. Hannah sagged again. Completely limp now. Jed checked her quick. Breathing. Still there. But fading. Fast. He clenched his jaw. Didn't like that. Didn't like it at all. He reached into his coat, pulling out the bundle she had handed him. Still wrapped tight. Still dry. Still important enough to get her chased halfway across open land. He didn't open it. Didn't need to. Not yet. He just looked at it for half a second, then made a decision. He slid it under the saddle strap, tight and hidden. Safer there. Harder to grab. If this turned worse, and it probably would, voices came around the side of the building. Closer now, spreading out, trying to cut him off. Smart. Jed swung back into full position, one arm steadying Hannah, the other guiding the reins again. He didn't have time to wait, didn't have time to hold ground, not with her like this. He needed distance. He needed a better place, a place with more eyes, more people, more truth. 'Cause out here, two men with guns could still turn a story any way they wanted, even with a witness, even with shots fired. He nudged the horse forward again. Slow at first, then quicker as the space opened behind the building. A narrow trail led away from dry crossing. Most folks didn't take it. Too rough. Too uneven, but Jed knew it. Every turn, every dip. He had used it years ago. Back when he still moved between places, instead of staying hidden in one, the riders came around the corner just as he cleared the back edge, saw him, adjusted, One of them raised his weapon again, but the angle was bad, and Jed was already moving. The horse pushed forward, hooves finding rhythm over rough ground. Jed didn't look back this time. Didn't need to. He could hear them. Still not done. Of course they weren't. Men like that didn't stop after one bad try. They kept going until there was nothing left to chase. Hannah stirred just once more. A weak breath. Jed leaned closer. "You're not done yet," he said quietly. More a promise than a question. Then he straightened again, eyes forward, path ahead. Mind already working through the next move, because this wasn't over. If anything, it had just started. So here's the real question. When a man has already crossed the line, already taken the first shot, what's stopping him from finishing it? The trail behind the building narrowed fast. Too narrow for comfort, too rough for speed. But that was the point. Jed leaned forward slightly, guiding the horse through the uneven ground, letting it find its own footing instead of forcing it. A bad step here would end everything. Behind him, the riders followed. He could hear them adjusting. Slowing where they had to, pushing where they could. They weren't giving up. Of course they weren't. Not with that bundle. Not with Boone Keller's name tied to whatever was inside it. Jed didn't need to open it to understand. Men like Boone didn't send riders like that over nothing. That meant one thing. Whatever Hannah carried, it wasn't just trouble. It was dangerous truth. Hannah shifted again, barely. Her weight leaned heavier against him. Too heavy now. Jed reached down, adjusting her slightly, keeping her from slipping off the side. Same word, same tone, but now there was something tighter under it. Time was running thin, real thin. The trail dipped into a stretch of low brush and broken ground. Roots, loose rock, sharp turns. Jed guided the horse through without slowing too much. He couldn't afford to lose distance, but he couldn't afford to fall either. Behind him, a voice shouted, closer than before, into the trail. Old man Jed almost smiled at that. Almost. Men who said things like that, they usually believed them. That was their weakness. He didn't answer. Didn't waste breath. He just kept riding. The trail curved left, then dropped into a shallow ravine. Dry, but deep enough to hide movement for a few seconds at a time. Jed took it without hesitation. Down. Then along the bottom. The sound of hooves shifted again behind him, echoing, harder to place. Good. That bought confusion. Confusion bought time. And time. That was everything right now. Hannah's head slipped forward again. This time it didn't come back up. Jed tightened his arm around her, checked her quick, breathing, but faint, too faint. He leaned closer. Hannah, he said. Nothing. He tried again, a little sharper. Hannah. A weak sound, barely, but enough to keep him going. He exhaled slow. All right. Still in this. Still fighting. He straightened again, eyes forward. The ravine opened up ahead into a wider stretch. Flat ground, bad for hiding. Good for speed. He pushed the horse forward, faster now. Not full run, but close, behind him. Now it was straight. Now it was simple. Jed's mind worked fast. Too open here, too exposed. He needed something else. Something to break lines. Something to slow him. He glanced ahead. There, a fallen tree, half across the path. Not enough to stop a horse, but enough to force a choice. Go around, or slow down. Jed didn't hesitate. He aimed straight for it. The horse responded. Trusted him. Good animal. They hit it fast, not jumping. Too risky. Instead, Jed pulled slightly, guiding the horse along the narrow side where the ground dipped just enough to squeeze past. Tight, real tight. The horse pushed through, branches scraping, hooves slipping for half a second, then clear. Behind him, one of the riders cursed. They had to slow just a little, but that was enough. Jed took it, pushed forward again to distance. He needed more distance, but not just distance, direction, because running blind only worked so you had to choose where you were going and why. He looked ahead. Then slightly to the left. There it was, a line of low hills. Beyond that, a narrow pass. Not a main road, not something most men would take. Too tight, too winding, too easy to get trapped. But Jed knew it. Had used it years back, when he still moved through these parts instead of staying hidden from them. That pass led somewhere with people. Not many, but enough to matter, enough to make things harder for men like Boone. He shifted the reins, turning slightly, not obvious, not sharp, just enough. Behind him, the riders noticed. Of course they did. They adjusted too. Hannah made a small sound, faint, like she was trying to say something. Jed leaned closer again. What is it? A pause. Then, don't trust. Her voice broke, faded, gone. Jed frowned. Don't trust who? No answer. Just silence. That sat wrong, real wrong, because up until now, the lines had been clear. Chased. Chasing. Simple. Now, maybe not so simple. He looked ahead again, then back. Just once. The riders were still there. Same distance, same steady pace, but now there was something else in his mind, something Hannah had just dropped and not finished. Don't trust. That could mean anything, or it could mean everything. Jed's grip on the reins tightened slightly. Not fear, focus. Because if there was something he was missing, something bigger than just two men chasing a girl, he needed to figure it out fast before it caught up with him. So here's the question. If the person you're risking everything to protect is trying to warn you, but can't finish the sentence, would you keep riding, or would you start wondering what you just rode into? Jed didn't slow. He couldn't. Not with Hannah fading like that. Not with those riders still sitting back there like they had all day to finish what they started. But her words, those two broken words, they stayed with him. Don't trust. They didn't fit. Not clean. Not simple. Jed had lived long enough to know when something didn't line up. And right now, something didn't. He rode harder, pushing the horse just enough to keep distance while the ground still allowed it. The hills ahead had grew closer, low at first, then rising, forming that narrow pass he remembered. A tight cut through rock and dirt. One way in, one way out. A bad place to get trapped, a good place to control a fight, if it came to that. Behind him, the riders kept pace. Steady, patient. That was the part he didn't like. Most men would rush by now. Push hard. Try to end it. But not these two. They stayed just far enough, like they knew something he didn't. Jed's eyes narrowed slightly. That thought, it stuck. He shifted in the saddle, adjusting Hannah again. Her breathing shallow enough that he had to check twice to be sure it was still there. But this time, it sounded different, more like a man asking than telling. No answer. He didn't expect one. The pass came up fast, rock on both sides, narrow, winding. Jed slowed just a little, not out of fear, out of respect. A horse could break a leg easy in there, and if that happened, everything ended right here. He guided them in, careful, controlled. The sound of hooves changed again, echoed. Tighter. Louder. Behind him, the riders entered too, no hesitation. That told him something. They weren't afraid of this place, which meant either they were confident or they had been here before. Jed didn't like either option. The path curved, sharp left, then right. The walls closed in tighter, barely enough room for one horse at a time. Good. That meant no flanking, no wide moves, just straight behind or nothing. Jed rode deeper. Every turn familiar. Every rock where he remembered it. Years hadn't changed much here. Places like this didn't. They just waited. Same as always. Hannah made a small sound, so faint he almost missed it. Jed. He blinked once. That got his attention. How do you know my name? He asked. Maybe she'd heard it before, out here. Names traveled farther than men did. No answer. Her head stayed down, her breath uneven, but that word, that one word, that hit harder than anything else so far. Jed's jaw tightened. He hadn't told her. Not once, not at the water, not on the ride, not back at the crossing. So how did she know? He didn't like that. Not at all. The path opened slightly ahead, just enough to see further down, and that was when he saw it. Movement, not behind. Ahead, a shape. Then another. 2 more riders. Waiting. Jed pulled the reins just enough to slow. Not stop, but slow. His eyes locked forward. Then now it made sense. They hadn't been chasing him. They had been guiding him. Slow, steady, patient, like men who knew exactly where the road was going to end. They weren't chasing to catch him. They were driving him. He could have turned earlier. He didn't. That was his mistake. Straight into this. Jed let out a slow breath. Low, controlled. All right, now the picture was clear. 4 men, not 2. Set up. Planned. And he had ridden right into the middle of it. He shifted his grip, adjusted his position, pulled Hannah tighter against him so she wouldn't fall when things turned. Because they were about to, no question. The riders ahead didn't move, just sat there. Watching, waiting. Same as the ones behind had been earlier. Now he understood why. They didn't need to rush. They already had the ending set. Jed looked at them, then back at the path behind, then down at Hannah. Still breathing, enough to make the next choice simple. He leaned forward slightly. Spoke low, more to himself than anyone else. All right. No panic, no fear. Just a man stepping into something he already knew he couldn't walk away from. He reached down with one hand, pulled the bundle from under the saddle strap, held it for a second. Felt the weight of it. Not heavy, but worth everything, apparently. He tucked it back inside his coat. Close, secure. Then he straightened, eyes forward again. The riders ahead shifted slightly, ready now. No more waiting. Jed didn't stop, didn't turn around, didn't try to run. Not here. Not in a place like this. He rode forward. Slow, deliberate. One step at a time, closing the distance, because sometimes running wasn't the answer. Sometimes you had to face what was coming and make them react to you instead. The space between them shrank 10 yards, 8, 5. Close enough now to see faces. Hard. One of them spoke, into the road. Jed nodded slightly. Looks that way. Calm. Too calm. That threw them off just a little. He saw it. That small crack. That hesitation. Men expected fear or anger. Not calm. Not this. Jed shifted once more in the saddle, positioning, balancing, preparing behind him. The other 2 riders closed in. Now it was tight. Front, back. No clean way out. Exactly how they wanted it. Exactly where they thought they had him. Jed looked down at Hannah one last time, then back up. And in that moment, everything slowed. Not the world, just him. The way it always did when things were about to break. So here's the question. When you finally realized you weren't escaping at all, you were being led, what do you do next? Fight your way out, or turn the trap into something they never saw coming? Jed didn't move, not when the men in front shifted in their saddles, not when the 2 behind closed the gap. Not when the space around him tightened into something that felt like the end of a road. He just sat there. One arm steady around Hannah, one hand resting near the reins, breathing slow, thinking clear. Because this was the moment, not the chase, not the river, not the first shot. This. Right here. This was where a man decided who he really was. The rider in front gave a small nod, like it was already done. like Jed just hadn't realized it yet. Easy way or hard way, he said. Jed looked at him. Really looked. Saw the confidence, saw the habit, saw a man who had stood in this exact place before and never lost. Jed gave a small nod back. Funny thing about that, he said, I don't see an easy way here for anyone. The man's eyes narrowed. Didn't like that answer. Didn't like the tone even more. Behind Jed, one of the riders shifted, boot scraping rock, hand moving again. Same motion as before. Same mistake. He moved first. Not fast, not wild, just exact. He pulled the reins sharp to the side. The horse turned tight, forcing the rider behind to adjust. That 1 second, that was all he needed. He leaned forward, low and controlled, guiding the horse straight between the two men ahead before they fully reacted. They didn't expect it. Didn't expect him to push forward into them instead of pulling back. That hesitation, that crack. It opened just enough. Jed took it. The horse surged through the narrow gap. One of the riders reached. Too late. Missed. Another shout. A curse, then chaos. Hooves. Rock. Dust. Movement everywhere. Jed didn't look back. Not yet. He pushed forward through the pass, trusting the path he knew better than they did. Behind him, the sound broke apart. Not clean anymore. Not controlled. They hadn't expected that move. They hadn't expected him to turn their trap into his road out. That was the difference. They had a plan. He had instinct, and sometimes that was enough. The pass widened ahead, just enough for speed. Jed didn't hold back now. He pushed the horse hard, fast, because now he had a chance. A real one. Hannah stirred weakly, barely, but still there, still breathing, still holding on. He leaned closer. We're getting out, he said. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a man saying something he intended to make true. Behind him, the riders regrouped. He could hear it, but the distance, it was growing. Slow, but real. And that was all he needed. A little space, a little time, enough to reach the next place, enough to turn this from a hunt into something else, something public, something they couldn't twist so easily. The pass opened fully. The land beyond stretched wide, open sky, low hills, a long road ahead. Jed slowed just a fraction. Not stopping, just thinking, because now came the part you had to decide what came after. Run forever. Or stand somewhere and make it count. He looked down at Hannah, then ahead, then back one last time. The riders were still there. Smaller now, but not gone. They wouldn't stop. Not until something forced them to. And that meant this wasn't finished. Jed exhaled slow. All right, then that's how it would be. He turned the horse slightly, not away, toward the road that led to people, to eyes, to voices, to truth. Because hiding wouldn't fix this. It never did. And maybe that was the whole point. Maybe that was what this had really been about from the start. Not just saving a girl, not just outrunning a few men, but choosing whether to stay quiet or step into something bigger. Even when it cost you. Even when it followed you. Even when it changed everything. Hannah made a small sound again. Soft. Weak. But there. And there was something in his voice now. Not just determination. Something closer to respect. Because she had held on this long. Through fear. Through cold. Through everything. Most people wouldn't have. Most people couldn't have. And that mattered. More than most folks ever realized. Hannah was still breathing. The bundle was still with him. And Boone Keller's men had not seen the last of either one. Now let me step out of the story for a moment. Because if you've stayed with me this far, you already feel it. This wasn't just about a man and a woman in the middle of nowhere. This was about something we all face, at some point, in some way. A moment where things look wrong from the outside. A moment where people are already judging, already deciding your story for you. And you have a choice. Do you step back, stay quiet, let things fall the way they fall? Or do you, even if it looks wrong to everyone else at first? Out here, a man doesn't always get an easy choice, but he usually gets a clear one. You either step in or you step back, and that choice stays with you longer than most wounds do. So when that moment comes for your son, your grandson, or for you, do you stand or do you walk away? So if this story meant something to you, if it made you think about a moment in your own life, go ahead and hit like. Subscribe to the channel, because there are more stories like this. Stories that don't just pass time, but stay with you. And before you go, I want you to tell me something. Where are you listening from? And what time is it right now where you are? Take a second, drop it in the comments. I read them, every single one. Because stories like this, they aren't just mine to tell. They're yours to carry forward. So here's the final question. When your moment comes, and it will you step back or will you stand your ground, even if the whole world is watching? Because sometimes being watched is the whole point. That's when a man finds out who he really is.